When we say that our students are getting unequal results from our education system, what do we mean? Well, we partly mean that they start out with different resources and access depending on their race and class. And we also partly mean that their needs are met to different degrees in our schools. We'll just go briefly through this article and look at the graphics. You're free to read it more completely online. We see here that the level of education of a child's parents varies significantly between the mother and father of Black children and the mother and father of white children. Although all have been increasing over time, a disparity remains, and in some places has increased. We see here overall educational attainment in the U.S. We see that Black folks are much more likely to have less than a high school education or only a high school education, as opposed to some college associates, bachelor's, or advanced, meaning master's, PhD. So children are starting out with parents who have, on average, different levels of education. They're also getting different levels of exposure to the activities that help them, even as young as the age of 2. There are differences in how often children are read to, told a story, taught their letters, engaged in arts and crafts, or taken to visit a library. The vast majority of children are still read to on a regular basis, but racial disparities begin even before kindergarten. Even though holding a child back, particularly for Black children, has not been shown to help them socially, emotionally, or educationally, Black children are far more likely to be held back than white children in each grade level. In fact, they're almost 3 times as likely to be held back. We see that the consequences of what children start out with, what they receive in school, and whether they're allowed to progress with their peers, all shake out in skill testing. We see that math and reading scores are different between Black and white folks as early as 4th grade and stay different from one another through the end of high school. The elephant in the room when talking about racial disparities in American schools is the school-to-prison pipeline. A disparity that starts early, starts with the discipline in our classrooms, moves up to expulsion and to other forms of punishment until we see vast differences by race in who is put into custody. Being in custody obviously has irreversible effects on the time and exposure that children have for learning. While gender differences are dramatic, we see that racial differences are even more dramatic. This is at the school level in terms of punishments. And when we're looking at what kind of schools children of color are attending, we see that there are racial differences in which children have access to a full range of math and science courses in their school, as well as we see very high numbers of minority students attending schools where most or even all of the students are minorities. Segregation has persisted in a significant way and recently gotten worse in the United States. We see that poverty disproportionately affects Black and Hispanic youth. Poverty comes with stress, traumatic factors, lack of stability needed to succeed in school, many complex related factors. And once we get all the way up to college, we see differences in who can graduate in 4 years, 5 years, or even 6 years